Alright, okay, good evening everyone. Hey, welcome to today's session. So as usual, some housekeeping quick disclaimer. Everything that we'll be covering in today's session is solely based on my personal opinion, right? And obviously they do not directly constitute to any kind of trade signals or financial advisory. Okay, and trading in the market involve risk, so just make sure you're aware and have the ability to manage risks on your side. Okay, so for those of you who are new, first time here, welcome. Those of you who have been joining us for some time, I think you are pretty familiar in the flow and how we run things over here. Okay, so first thing first, what I'll do is I'll walk you through the general market direction, some of the things to note for the week itself. Okay, and then we'll open up for a short and quick Q&A, and basically after that we'll then wrap up the session. Okay, and see how the market can move and develop within the week itself. Okay, so first thing first, let's take a look at the events calendar. Okay, now this week here we do have a, I would say, eventful week, right? We have a lot of high impact, important news for the week itself. Starting tomorrow, you can see over here, right? Starting tomorrow, we do have the Bank of Japan coming in. We do have the RBA coming in. And then in the evening, we also have the Canadian data in terms of CPI. Okay, so for those of you who are interested in trading the news for short-term volatility, then the Canadian CPI data is definitely one that you can be trading. Okay. Obviously, you want to take note of the yen volatility as well as the Aussie side of things, right? Because they are releasing the statement, and oftentimes this can also create like huge volatility within the short period of time, right? Then going into Wednesday, we have the pound CPI year on year. Again, very important data. Right now, the expected data is 3.5 versus last previous data was 4.0. So again, for those of you who are interested into news trading, okay, CPI data is definitely something you can trade, okay, because the banks are basically still looking out for the inflationary aspect, okay, that's developing in the market. Then on Thursday, we have the FOMC Fed funds rate, okay, so again, that's going to be important. Following that, we have a couple of Europe PMIs, and then we have the SMB policy coming in. Okay, in terms of Swiss franc, I think not many people trade it, but if you're, then be aware of it. Okay, and then after that, we have the Bank of England coming in, and then to end off the week, okay, we have the Euro Summit. So definitely a very eventful week in terms of like all these events, and definitely it will have, I would say, more of a volatile week within this week here as well. Okay, so if you're trading any related currencies, the first thing you need to note is, of course, pay attention to the releases, because that's where the market volatility might kick in. So if you're trading, you might want to factor in that kind of volatility as well, right? And of course, if you're more of a short term looking for news trader opportunities, then there are many available within the week. Okay, so that's a quick one. So with that said, let's take a look at the charts over here and share with you some of the analysis that I have. Okay, so I'll start off with the dollar index. Dollar index actually made a decent push to the upside. We were expecting that retracement last week. We kind of got that. And the market is currently testing the equal leg, right? WXY. So I'm neutral right now because there's a good possibility, while this may go up a little bit more, there's a good possibility we'll start to see some kind of a reaction. Okay, and for that reason, I would like to see how the market is going to react first, right? Which means I'm not going to be too aggressively jumping into buy or sell, but I just want to be at the sidelines, see how the market is going to develop from here on. Then that would leave me clue whether going forward, I'll be more interested in the dollar strength, or am I going to be more interested in the dollar weakness. Okay, so we're kind of in a crossroad right now for dollar index, and that's the reason why we're neutral. Okay, in terms of euro dollar, though I'm a little bit more on the bearish side of things. Okay, why is because this three wave move, the pullback, yes, it may have started in three, but it's a little bit shallow to have the correction end there. And for that reason, I'm actually expecting just kind of a pullback here, and then we'll likely see another 3-wave move to complete the bigger 1, 2, 3, right? So that's my expectation, and that's the forecast that I have as of now. Okay, the confirmation of this obviously is if the market is going to give us a corrective pullback. Okay, I would be very interested to look for the sell for one more leg to the downside, right? So potentially coming back to it somewhere in this zone around that 50% mark, okay? Because this is kind of 1, 2, 3. We expect this to come back 1, 2, 3, right? So short term for euro dollar, I'm still more interested in the downside for now, okay? This is actually quite similar to the pound side as well as the Aussie side, okay? So pound side here, we kind of get a push down. So again, if we can get a corrective pullback, then I'll be interested in the sell, okay? So some of this major pairs here are having a clear directional bias, right? Which means that I have a clear direction that I can be focusing on. All I need to do is just wait for the setup to come to me. Then I'll be interested in taking that trade, right? So if we kind of take a look at Aussie here, quite similar as well. Okay, the market put in a 3-wave move to the upside. We got our internal small 3-wave here to the downside. So if we can get a corrective structure, then we'll be interested in one more push down, right? To give us again a bigger 1, 2, 3. Okay, so the euro dollar, the pound dollar, as well as the Aussie dollar, kind of building into quite similar structure. If you're kind of trading the major pairs, on euro, pound, and AUD, and you start to realize that, oh, 3 of them are giving you a similar entry setup, then you want to also take note of your risk exposure, right? Because you are essentially buying the dollar 3 times if you're trading 3 similar setup, right? So that's one thing to note. We'll see how the market develop from here. Obviously, today we don't have any setup on this tree. Moving forward, going into maybe FOMC, we might get some clear structure that we can capitalize on. Okay, but for now, that's the directional bias for me, right, in terms of that 3 pair. Then we have the dollar Canadian. Okay, so dollar Canadian right now is currently testing the 618 retracement. Ideally, I want it to develop some kind of rejection to the downside from here on. Okay, if we get that, then obviously we can start to look for more downside, because we'll then see this as a 3-wave completed. This is our first push down. We can expect one more drop, right? But I want to be patient right now. Okay, again, this is what we call market being at a crossroad, right? It's like it reached a point where it's now essential to let the market tell us what is the next thing it wants to develop, right? So we really need to just be patient, give the market a little bit of time. It will start to drop clues whether the market is likely going to continue higher or it's likely going to come back down. Okay, so as I mentioned over here, we're currently testing the 618. If we can get a decent rejection from here, something like that, then obviously we'll start to look for the downside. Okay, so that's on the dollar Canadian. I think in terms of the overall structure here, okay, even if we get the downside, from a larger perspective, this downside here may just complete the corrective structure and one more push up, right? So again, you can see from smaller perspective to a larger perspective how the market starts to develop. Okay, so smaller perspective here is we are looking at the sell potentially, right? And then after that, we'll be looking for the buy to again complete this bigger structure. Okay, that can be one way to look out for things. Okay, so we'll see. For now, if I zoom back in a little bit, we just want to give it time and see how the market is going to develop from here on. Okay, then we have dollar yen. Dollar yen is something that I will just not spend any time to be focusing on it at all this week, okay? Because I think dollar yen here is probably just going to be neutral. It's a V shape right now. There's really no clear pattern developing as of this time. Okay, so I'm just going to leave this aside. Gold, okay, I think many people are very interested in gold, but I think you don't want to be rushing things through, right? The market made a very impulsive move to the upside. Right now, it seems to be pulling back. I think it's a little bit too small to say that, oh, this pullback is completed, right? It hasn't really come back to the trade 2 at all, okay? So the minimum expectation is for the market to really just come back to its trade 2. Sometimes it can go deeper, okay? But the first level I'll be more interested to keep an eye on is really the 38.2 retracement. Okay, and I want to see this coming down correctively for me to get involved in the buy. So we'll see. Again, I don't think we'll get anything meaningful within the week. Maybe next week. Okay, but dollar yen and gold here, really nothing for me. Okay. Then we have crude oil. Crude oil here, I'm actually a little bit on the neutral towards bearish. Okay. The market is really putting in a crawl and maybe here another smaller crawl. Okay, so it can be a crawl within a crawl. Based on where the price is right now, based on context, I don't think you want to be buying. We are also, kind of testing the top of the channel. I don't think it's worth buying into it, right? Rather, you will want to be patient and see, can you get involved in the potential sell? Okay, maybe this would push one more up to give us a crawl pattern. You can be aggressive by looking at a breakout point. You can wait for the push down, wait for the correction to sell it. I think the downside in terms of risk to reward ratio would definitely be more interesting than buying it up where we are right now. Okay, so that's my take on crude oil. I'll be keeping watch on this, but definitely want to see how it's going to develop as well, because as I always say, the market will leave clues, right, in terms of the pattern that it will develop. Okay. Then we have the S&P. S&P over here, I'm actually interested in taking the short-term sell to downside, right? In fact, I have one sell trade running, not really great at the moment. Okay, or in fact, hit my stop already. So let me just, wow, okay. Okay, let me walk you through this chart. Yep, here, okay. Let me walk you through this chart and what I'm seeing. Okay, so S&P over here, basically this morning, right? As of this morning, it looks something like that. What I'm interested in is really a short-term sell, okay, to kind of like trade the retracement of it, okay. So that's what I'm looking at. Obviously, as of now, okay, because I'm actually anticipating that we can get a rejection from here, right? So as of now, obviously the market has pushed up a little bit more. Okay, doesn't mean that we were gonna buy it. No, as well. Again, this pattern to me is not a buy trade. Okay? This pattern to me is more of like, likely is either gonna do kind of a corrective pushback or potentially a more aggressive retracement. Okay, the probability of that happening is actually higher. Right, so to be overall here, right, to be in establishing a directional bias, I'm still going to hold on to a bearish perspective until the market prove me otherwise, right? Which means that until we're going to see an impulsive break following that a corrective pullback, then yeah, I'll be starting to shift towards being bullish. But if the market is just going to continue to crawl like that, okay, that means it can break this high, but if it breaks it without momentum, I'm not keen in buying in terms of the pattern structure. Okay, so again, these trend lines can always be updated, right? So I don't trade the trend line. The trend line is really there to kind of illustrate and communicate the idea that I'm looking at. Okay, so obviously you don't sell it now. Initially, this was the setup over here. Okay, this was the setup I'm looking at. But of course, we just kind of got stopped out from this. We just need to wait for the next setup to be entering. Okay, so the framework here is quite clear, right? We have a directional bias to be established first. So you want to have a clear direction in terms of like, do you want to focus on a buy or do you want to focus on sell? Okay. Once you have a clear directional bias, then the next thing to do is to find a valid setup. Okay, if you don't have a setup, don't trade the market, right? So like this context here, this case study, right? We're interested in the sell. Right now, I don't have a sell setup already, right? Before this entire development, we have a sell setup. Okay, based on order flow, we have a sell setup, based on this pattern, but of course the market develops, and right now it has invalidated that setup, and that's the reason why we got out of the trade. Okay, and we don't have a sell right now. Okay, pound yen, I'm gonna be neutral. It's in a range bound environment, so I'm just gonna leave it until the market can break out of the range. Okay, so nothing really there. Aussie yen, kind of similar context in some of the major pairs over here, right? You can see we are at a crossroad right now. I'm neutral at the moment. Okay, so we kind of get this 1, 2, 3. The market pulled back towards 50%. This is again a crossroad over here, whether the market is going to reject, then we can start to look for more downside. Okay, this would then develop into a bigger pattern, or this one here simply does a correction. Okay, and then of course we didn't expect upside. This would be the completion of it. Okay, so I'm gonna give it some time, see how the market is gonna react off this 98 area. Okay, then maybe later part of this week is where we're gonna get a little bit more information. Okay, Pound Australia here, I'm interested in the downside. Okay, if we can get a little bit more of a push up, okay, towards the area here around 1.9455, that would be ideal, right? That will complete a 1, 2, 3, and then this area here will be where we can look for a sell. Okay, then this will give me again 1, 2, 3, maybe towards this area, right? So Pound Auth is another one that I'm interested in selling. There's a clear directional bias. I just need to wait for the setup to come to me, and then I can execute the trade. Okay. EuroCAD, nothing there. Again, you can see how the market is basically in a consolidation. There's no trade. Okay. Then last but not least, I think very, very interesting here is BTC, right? Because for many people who are kind of monitoring the crypto space, you know that April and May is where the halving is coming. Okay, and obviously a lot of people will be excited about it. Potentially, want to capitalize on this opportunity, right? So what's my take on halving? Okay, historically, in the previous halving, prices tends to pull back quite aggressively before the event, and after the event, prices tends to skyrocket. Okay, but then right now there's quite a debate, right? Some people would say like last time the prices were not as high, and therefore it can skyrocket. But right now, one BTC is about like 70,000, right? How much more can it go? Okay, to be honest, I'm not really like investing into it, right? I'm more of like trading it. Okay, so if the price chart suggests that there's more upside, we'll just trade it to the upside, right? We don't really care what price it is, because at the end of the day, we're just trading the price movement. Okay, so what's on the price level that I'm looking at for Bitcoin, right? Obviously the first area to be looking at is where the previous low is. Okay, so in this case it's somewhere around 60,000. Does it mean that I'll just buy when the price tag the 60,000? No, right? I also want to go back to the framework. Okay, if I'm interested in the buy, I have a clear directional bias. I still need a setup to get involved in the trade. Okay, so short term here, I think Bitcoin may pull back a little bit, maybe towards the 60,000. Okay, and then from there, maybe the market will give us some kind of reaction going into April, May. We may start to see some bounce, and then that would be giving us a buy trade setup, right? Now, one thing to note is never follow the news itself, right? I kind of highlight to traders that the news tends to report what has happened, okay? Not what is about to happen, right? So if you start to see the news saying that, oh, Bitcoin has dropped a lot, things like that, it's not a sell signal, right? You don't want to be selling Bitcoin because the news say that the price of Bitcoin is falling, right? They're basically reporting and telling you price has fallen. Okay. So it's important to not make trading decision just based on the news headlines that you see. I think that's important. Okay. Especially going into halving, right? I'm pretty sure in the crypto space, with whatever news outlet that you are potentially monitoring, okay, specifically in the crypto space, there will be more and more news coming in, as we get closer towards the next halving, right? And there's definitely going to be a lot of speculation and things like that. This is again back to, you need to have a very clear trading plan. Okay, and you need to then stick to your trading plan, right? You need to have the discipline to kind of follow through on that. Okay, so for me, BTC right now, there's really nothing there. Okay, unless you say, okay, you want to do a little bit of a counter trend sell, then yeah, I think that's possible. But again, I wouldn't want to be selling into BTC at this moment, simply because I'm looking at the halving coming in, right? So I'm only interested to maybe focus on the buy side of things. But I want to wait for the pullback, right? I want to wait for the buy signal before I get involved in it. Okay, so in kind of summarize a little bit what we've went through so far, I think this week, definitely a lot of high impact news, very eventful. Take note of the volatility. Some of these major pairs here, like Euro Dollar, Aussie Dollar, and Dollar Canadian, are likely going to present some opportunities within the week itself. Okay, and then in terms of Pound Australia here as well, right, as one of the cross pair that I'm looking at. Okay, so those are the few things you can potentially look out for. Okay, I see over here Sulanto asks, did the pound yen or euro yen form a crawl on the hourly? Yes, right. I mean, this is looking crawlish. Okay, which again suggests short term perhaps we'll see some kind of a pullback or even potentially a reversal. Okay, yeah, so that's a crawl pattern itself. I think euro yen will probably look similar because these two pair, kind of like correlate. Okay, this looks crawlish as well. Okay, and of course this also looks like it has completed maybe a three-wave move. Okay, so again this suggests that potentially a retracement, okay, or potentially a reversal to the downside. Okay, so that's on the euro yen and pound yen. But again, you don't want to trade every other crawl, okay, because you want to add in the context element, right? So this one here, I think it's not a bad idea to be looking at it because in terms of context, we have the market kind of reacting off the 618 at the moment, right? So the crawl is kind of developing around that 618. If you are kind of a structure trader, you can see previously we do have some kind of a previous bounce around that zone, so maybe support and resistance. Yeah, that's something to add on, right? So that's what I meant by context, right? You add extra layers on top of just the pattern itself. Okay, so yeah, hopefully that is clear. So, let me see. Generally, that's a few things, right, to look out for. Again, I don't always have a lot of things on my list. I like to keep things focused. Okay, so like for example, euro, dollar, and Aussie dollar. Likely, I'm gonna only take one of this. Okay, because I understand they are correlated. Dollar CAD as well, but probably need to give it a bit of time, right? Because as I mentioned again, going back to the calendar this week, there's a lot of high impact news. Okay, and oftentimes when there's a lot of high impact news, the market would tend to just range a little bit prior to the news, right? Because generally people might want to wait for the news release before they take action. Okay, so you need to definitely be patient a little bit throughout this week. Okay. Dio says Tesla seems to have made a three-wave correction on the H4, but seems like it could still go down more in a bigger correction of three-wave. Okay, Tesla. Let's see. Yeah, I would say, let me just drag this out a little bit, right? I would say this is, as you mentioned, right? So if you can adjust this a little bit, your WXY probably complete. Okay, we might also have completed the bigger yellow WXY. Kind of tag a very nice little 100% flip here. Okay, so I would say what we want to look out for. Okay, going down to the lower time frame a little bit. We do have a little bit of a gap up here. So what you want to potentially be looking at is, can we get a corrective structure, or maybe a little bit of a double bottom. Okay, so we can either get a double bottom, or if this just forms a nice little corrective structure here, okay, then that would be a nice little buy trade. Okay, so based on this pattern structure, right, I would not be too eager to sell it anymore. Okay, based on the pattern here, I'll be more keen to look for upside potential. Okay, so that's my take on Tesla. Please share your view on some of the indices. Index over here, if you are looking at, I think we talked about the S&P. Okay, if you are looking at the Asia markets, right? So this is the A50, the China market. I think overall there's still a little bit more upside here. We can look up for it. Okay, have a little bit of an impulse move here. If this comes a correction, then of course a little bit more upside. I think HSI. Okay, HSI is a little bit different, right, in terms of the price development right now. This two is diverging a little bit. Most of the time they are kind of in correlation, but this time right, it seems a little bit diverging. Okay. If I'm gonna clean this up, okay, this may actually be a short-term high right now for Hang Seng. Okay, so HSI. I would say if you're looking at HSI, if this gives you a corrective pullback, you may look for a short-term sell. Okay, kind of put in a fib here. Okay, we may see something like this. Okay, so this again coincides quite nicely with this bottom, right? Yeah, so short term, if you can get a corrective pullback, then in terms of Hang Seng, maybe you can consider a sell trade to the downside. Okay. If you are looking at Australia's side of things, okay, we kind of tagged the 50% mark quite nicely, right? So yeah, okay, so you can see here, 3 move to the upside, 1, 2, 3 to the downside. So is this correction done? Again, if we can get a nice corrective push here, a small little one, okay, corrective pullback, then we can expect more upside from there. You may want to utilize a little bit of a visual aspect, right? Again, I don't trade the trend line, but I think it's just more of a visual cue. If you put in a parallel channel, okay, kind of guide you a little bit in terms of like what is the potential upside you can consider. Okay, so I would say since market actually reacted off this 50% nicely, you may want to consider more of a focus on the upside, right? If you can get the setup to buy in. Okay, so that's on the Aussie side of things. Yeah, so I think those are the few, right? If you're looking at German DAX, this is correct. This is crawlish as well, right? So I obviously wouldn't want to be buying into German DAX, but you'll be wanting to more of, if you're trading the German DAX, you'll be more interested to look for the sell side of things. Okay, something like that, right? Okay, so those are the index. Yeah. Cool. Okay, so those are the couple of things that you can definitely keep an eye on. Good. Now, before we kind of wrap up today's session, very quickly to share with you this. I think most of you who have been joining us for some time already know about everything trading. But for those of you who are new, first time watching, right? Everythingtrading.com, you can go over to their website and sign up for your free account. Okay, so inside it, let me just very quickly show you, right? If you sign up already, okay, you'll be able to log in. Okay, okay, good, I'm already logged in. Okay, so once you log in, on the left, okay, you can see a couple of different things. Okay, what I want to bring your attention to is the live trading sessions. Okay, so inside everythingtrading.com, there are a couple of different traders conducting the different trading sessions as well, right? So over here you can see for me is on Thursday evening, right? That's where I run the English session. On Wednesday I run a Chinese session itself. Okay, so you can then click register and just follow the instruction accordingly. But for those of you who haven't really logged in, this is something you can make full use of. Okay, I won't go through everything on the left, but again, if you're very new, they have some beginner courses you can go through. There are some advanced tools that may assist you in your trading as well. Okay, you can definitely take a look. Okay, once you register for an account, you can sign up and then log in, and then you'll be able to see all this information inside. Okay. Okay, good. So I kind of missed out the FTSE just now, right? So let's take a look at FTSE. Okay, I think FTSE from the last we share, you might want to be a little bit careful because again, this may suggest a deeper pullback or maybe the bounce. Okay. Yeah, you want to be careful in buying, right? But I would be more keen to look for a sell, okay? Because again, the market seems to be respecting this area. Okay, we have a little bit of a resistance from a channel structure as well. So I think short term, the market may pull back. okay, and you may want to consider on selling opportunity, and then after that, maybe somewhere at the bottom here, you want to look for a buyback again. Okay, so that's the view on FTSE. Okay, in terms of US 30 Dow Jones, probably kind of similar pattern development with the US side of things, but this one here may turn into a simple WXY. Okay, so maybe the market is going to do something like this and then starts to go back up, right? So for Dow Jones, you may want to look out for potential buy instead of like the sell side, because the downside may not be attractive, right? But if this is likely going to develop in the 3-wave, then you want the market to come down correctively. Okay, then that's the area to look for a buy. Right. So yeah, the Dow Jones seems to be giving us a little bit different pattern as compared to the S&P, right? So if you're interested more in the buy side of things for the US market, then the Dow Jones pattern seems to be better, okay? It seems to give you a high probability of a buy trade, whereas the S&P seems to suggest to be cautious on buying. Okay, so that's the difference between that two. Good. Okay, so generally that's about it from my side. Kind of hope today's session over here also give you an overview of the week. Giving you some ideas in terms of what to look out for. And hopefully it can help you in your trading as well. Okay, so that's all for me. All the best for the week itself. We'll see how the market develop. Again, there's a lot of high impact news, so make sure you're aware of your risk management. Make sure it's in place. And all the best, right? We'll see you guys again next week. Okay, so guys, bye bye.